Gavari was at Aleppo when Selim's ambassadors reached him. He committed the folly as well as the crime of threatening them with insult and personal violence, so on the approach of the Turkish army he set them at liberty and vainly endeavored to open negotiations. The first battle which determined the fate of Syria was fought on the 23rd August 1516, not far from Aleppo, in a plain where, according to Mahometan tradition, is the tomb of David. The effect of the Turkish artillery and the dissensions among the Mamluks themselves gave Selim an easy victory, and the aged Sultan Gauhari died while endeavoring to escape. The Mamluks chose as their new Sultan Toman Bey, a chief eminent for his valor and the nobility and generosity of his disposition. Their defeat had not dampened the spirits of the Mamluks, who remembered their victories in the former war and considered themselves far superior to the Ottomans in military skill and personal prowess. During the confusion caused by the defeat and death of the Sultan and the return of the principal surviving base to Cairo for the purpose to electing his successor, Selim had been suffered to occupy Aleppo, Damascus, Jerusalem, and the other Syrian cities without resistance. But it was resolved to defend the passage of the desert against him, and an advanced force of Mamluks was sent to Gaza, while Toman Bey concentrated the mass of the Egyptian forces in the vicinity of Cairo. Selim prepared for the difficult march from the inhabited portion of Syria of the Egyptian frontier. With his customary forethought and energy, he purchased many thousand camels, which were laden with water for the use of his army while crossing the desert, and he distributed a liberal donative of money among his men. His Grand Vizier Sinan Pasha defeated the advance force of the Mamluks near Gaza after an obstinate fight which was determined in favor of the Turks by their artillery. The Turkish army then crossed the desert in 10 days, and marched upon the Egyptian capital, Cairo. Toman Bey's army was at Ridania, a little village on the road leading towards the city, and it was there that the decisive battle was fought on the 22nd January 1570. Two of the Egyptian Sultan's chief officers, Ghazali and Khair Bey, had betrayed him and baffled the skillful tactics by which he hoped to take the Ottoman army in flank while on the march. So, compelled to fight at disadvantage, the Mamluk chivalry never signalized their valor more than on the fatal day of Ridania. At the very commencement of the action, a band of horsemen, armed from head to foot in steel, galloped from the Egyptian left in upon the Turkish center, to where the Sultan's own banner was displayed. Toman by himself and two of his best captains, Alan Bey and Kurt Bey, led his daring charge. They had sworn to take the Ottoman Sultan dead or alive, and Selim was only saved by their mistaking for him Sinan Pasha, the Grand Vizier, who was at that moment in the center of a group of principal officers of the Turkish army. Toman Bey speared Sinan through and through. Alan Bey and Kurt Bey killed each a pasha, and then rapidly wheeling their ready charges, the blood Mamluks rode back to their own army. So Alan Bey received a severe wound from a bullet. The other Mamluks saved those whom treachery kept back, charged with valor worthy of such chiefs. But the effort of this splendid cavalry was vain against the batteries of Selim's artillery, as were in after time the charges of their successors against the rolling fire of Napoleon's squares. Toman Bey and a relic of his best cavalry escaped to Adivye, but 25,000 Mamluks lay heaped on the plain of Ridania. Selim sent a detachment of his army to occupy Cairo. They entered it without resistance. 7 days after the battle, but the indomitable Toman Bey suddenly came upon the intrusive garrison and slew them to a man. Selim sent his best troops to retake the city, which had no regular fortifications, but in which the Turks now found every street barricaded, and every house a fortress. A desperate street battle now ensued, and for 3 days the Mamluks held Cairo against the assaulting columns of the Sultan. At the suggestion of the traitor Khair Bey, Selim now proclaimed an amnesty to such Mamluks as would surrender. On the faith of this promise, the warfare ceased, and 800 of the chief Mamluks voluntarily became Selim's prisoners or were given up to him by the citizens. Selim had them all beheaded and then ordered a general massacre of the wretched inhabitants of Cairo. 50,000 human beings are said to have perished in this atrocious butchery. Kurt Bey, who was reputed the most violent of the Mamluks, was for a time concealed in Cairo. But Selim, by promises of safety, induced the campaign of the Circassian race to present himself before him. Selim received him, stead of his throne, and with all the dignitaries of his camp around him. Selim, looking on him, said, "Thou what a hero on horseback! Where is now thy valour?" "It is always with me," answered Courtbay, laconically. "Knowest thou what thou hast done to my army?" Right well. Selim then expressed his astonishment at the attack on his person, which Kurt Bey had a concert with Toman Bey and Alan Bey dared to make at Ridania, and which had proved so fatal to Sinan Pasha. Upon this Kurt Bey, who was as renowned for his eloquence as for his courage, poured forth a brilliant eulogy on the valor of the Mamluks, and spoke with contempt and abhorrence of guns, which he said killed the crowd cowardly and so like an assassin. The reader will remember Hotspur old Knowles in relating the victory of Selim over the Persians breathes the same spirit. He says that the Persian cavalry had been of the Turks invincible if it had not been overwhelmed by the cruel, crowdly, and murdering artillery, and wonder of multitude of men. See also Byron Island, Canto 3, and note. With respect to the speech of Courtbay in the text, it is to be observed that it ought not to be considered a mere imaginary composition, like the speech in many of the classical historians and in many of their modern imitators. Von Hammer gives this dialogue between Courtbay and Selim on the authority of, among others, the Sheikh Zainal, who had held an appointment at Toman Bey's court, and who must have been an ear witness of much related in his narrative of the conquest of Egypt. See the list of oriental authorities prefixed von Hammer, Book 13. He told Selim that the first time that Venetian bullets, so the Mamluks called cannon and musket balls, were brought into Egypt was in the region of Ashraf Kanaso, when a Mauritanian offered to arm the Mamluks with them. But the Sultan and the Beys of the army rejected that innovation in warfare as unworthy of true valor, and as a departure from the example of the Prophet who had consecrated the sabre and the bow as the fit weapons for his followers. Courtbay said that the Mauritanian had on this refusal cried out, "Some of you shall live to see this empire perish by these bullets." Alas, added Courtbay, that prediction is accomplished, but all power is in the hands of God the Most High. how comes it, said Selim, if ye place all your strength in the word of God, that we have beaten you and driven you from your strong places, and thou thyself standest here a prisoner before me. By Allah, answered Bey, we were not overthrown because ye were braver in battle or better horsemen than we, but because it was our destiny. For all that has a beginning must have an end, and the duration of empires is limited. Where are the caliphs, those champions of Islam? Where are the mightiest empires of the world? And your time also, ye Ottomans, will come, and your dominion shall in turn be brought not nothing. As for myself, I am not the prisoner, Sultan Selim, but I stand here free and secure by reason of the promises and pledges. Bey then turned to the traitor Kahir Bey. We stood by Selim during this interview, and after heaping the most withering invectives on him, he counselled Selim to strike the betrayer's head off, lest they should drag him down to hell. Then said Selim, full of wrath, I had thought to set thee free, and even to make thee on one of my bays. But thou hast loosened the tongue in an unseemly curse, and not set respect of my presence before thine eyes. He who stands before princes without reverence is driven from them with shame. Bey answered with spirit, God preserve me from ever being officer the thine. At these words Selim's rage overwhelmed, and he called for executioners. 100 swords were ready at his command. What good will my single head do there? Continued the fearless Mamluk, when so many brave men are on the watch for sin, and Ottoman Bey still trusts in God. Selim signed to one of his headsmen to strike, while the sabre was swung round the sleigh. The doomed hero turned to Bey, take my bloody head, traitor, and place it in the wife's lap, and my God make the betrayer betray it. Such were the last words of Bey, the bravest of the brave Mamluks. Ottoman Bey, after the final loss of Cairo, had sought to strengthen himself by employing Arabs in his army, contrary to the former practice of the Mamluks. He gained some advantage over the detachments of Selim's army, and Selim offered him peace on conditions of his acknowledging himself to be vassal of the Ottoman Sultan. But the treacherous massacre at Cairo and the execution of Bey had exasperated exasperated the Mamluks, and they put Selim's messenger and the whole of his attendants to death. Selim retorted by the slaughter of 3,000 prisoners. The war continued a little longer, but the Arabs and the Mamluks under Toman Bey quarreled with each other and fought in the very presence of the Ottoman army, which poured its cannonade upon the combatants with impartial destructiveness. At length Toman Bey's forces were entirely dispersed, and he himself was betrayed into the hands of the Turks. When Selim was informed of his capture, he exclaimed, "God be praised! Egypt is now conquered." He at first treated his brave prisoner with merited respect, but the traitors Ghazali and Khalil Bey were determined that their former sovereign should perish, and they raised Selim's suspicions that there was a plot to liberate the royal prisoner and restore him to power. Selim on this ordered him to be put to death, and the last Mamluk Sultan, the brave, the chivalrous, the just Toman Bey perished on the 17th of April, 1517.